birthday, CBC. CBC turned 75 today. 75 years young, I might add. A lot has changed since 1936 when the Crown Corporation started up. No internet, no television. CBC didn't even broadcast an FM radio. What role does the government see for the CBC in the era of streaming video and citizen journalism? Joining me now, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, James Moore. Minister, good to see you.
Pleasure.
75 years CBC celebrating today. I'm glad you're here. Some people are looking back. A lot of people are looking forward. What's the future of public broadcasting in Canada?
Well, it's a good question and a big question with a lot of parts. Look, the question of public broadcasting, I think Canadians have to wrestle with, and it's cyclical, and I think we need to re-engage on, is first, is there a role for a public broadcaster? In Canada, in my judgment, absolutely yes. The second question is, what should its mandate be? And the third question is, given that mandate, how much are we prepared to pay for it? But I think that the CBC's role in Canada is obviously to be a purely Canadian broadcaster, and I know that the 2015 plan, which I've endorsed, which has been put together by Hubert Lacroix, Christine Stewart, and the other folks at the top, I think speaks to that, and I think it speaks to the appetite that Canadians have wanted to see. Also, more news in the regions being spread across the country as a pan-Canadian platform for Canadian content, and also as a minister responsible for culture, I think it's essential that CBC continues to be a platform for Canadian arts and culture. And it can't obviously go without saying that as a pan-Canadian platform in both of Canada's official languages, the CBC uniquely has that mandate that no private broadcaster delivers.
Now let's get to part three. So now you've covered the mandate and you've covered the role. Now the question is the cash. When you were elected and you talked about this, that there would be stable funding for CBC. Now you've talked about CBC has to do its share. What kind of cuts will CBC, if any, have to face?
The CBC will be part of our plan to balance the budget. CBC's budget next year will be smaller than it is this year. I've said that consistently now since the campaign over 6 months. What we have said since we were first elected in 2006 is that the CBC will have steady and stable funding, and we've delivered that. We said in the most recent election that we would retable the legislation that the budget that we had tabled just prior to the May 2nd campaign. We kept our word and we did that, but we also said, of course, that we are going to balance the budget, and we're asking everybody, not just the CBC, but across all of government, all departments, all agencies, to find efficiencies.
But some the CBC there'll be ranges. Let's just try to figure out what, just on the CBC issue, and not to be too navel-gazing, but it's in the papers a lot. There's a lot. This has become a big political issue real quick. We're hearing $100 million in cuts.
Well, look, you'll wait for the budget and you'll see the budget. But the answer is we're actually still doing an assessment across the department of how we're going to meet our targets. But the CBC will have the funding necessary to do its job as spelled out in the Broadcast Act. And I should also say that the ambitious plan, the 2015 plan that the CBC has put in place, is something that we support. And I'm confident that the amount of money that the CBC will have in their budget will be enough to fulfill that mandate. But also keeping in mind, at a time of shrinking costs of production with digital technology and the good management decisions that have been made and can continue to be made in terms of shrinking the number of unions. There used to be 9 unions, now there's 6. Cross-pollination of talent on the production side, post-production side that's happening at the CBC makes it more affordable for the CBC to produce shows on multiple platforms and to do so more efficiently. That's a good move, and it's a good steps in the right direction, and I think it can continue, and I think we can still have a very high-quality public broadcaster that's delivered efficiently.
Some of the critics of the CBC, Quebec they've appeared before a parliamentary committee talking about access to information. It's been a big political issue. Even today, there's a committee on the ethics committee that Dean Del Mastro, 2 opposition parties, have decided to leave that committee because of access to information documents. What's your view? Has CBC been transparent enough in terms of giving out documents that have been requested?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Hubert Lacroix, I think the intent is there in the legislation for, frankly, to help the CBC help itself. If the CBC is going to remain a relevant public broadcaster to taxpayers, and taxpayers are going to continue to consent to having their tax dollars going to the CBC, CBC has to be open and transparent with documents, with information that people ask for. Now, obviously, there's some silly bugger going on with people trying to play games with access to information requests, but there's a legitimate reason why we put the CBC under the Access to Information Act, under our Federal Accountability Act, which is to gain accountability. It's to the CBC's interest to make sure that they're playing ball and are seen to be playing ball in terms of access.
What silly games? You said silly games. What are the silly games?
Well, I just think if some people are overloading access to information requests for the, if I ask you 45 questions and I give you 3 minutes to answer them, and you only get through 30 of the answers, and I say, Evan Solomon is trying to dodge me on 15 of the answers. Well,
you think that's happening?
I think it's pretty clear that from some corners there are games being played, but I don't think we can allow the games being played to allow the perception to sink in that the CBC isn't being accountable to Canadians.
In your own party,
and I think that's a legitimate concern. I think both the Information Commissioner and Conrad von Finkenstein have pointed out that the provision in the Accountability Act and the Access to Information Act that protects journalistic integrity and commercial interests could be being overused by the CBC, and I think that's a legitimate concern. It's a charge that's been raised, and I'm looking forward to hearing Ms. Isabelle Lacroix, the president of the CBC, address it.
How much time in your own party do you have to spend trying to talk about the relevance of the public broadcaster? And you have some members of your party who are very open, saying you should defund it. There's no need for it. It's redundant. Are those arguments you have to have internally within the party?
I think families disagree around the kitchen table about the CBC. It's not uncommon. I do find it interesting that I get sort of attacked from the right, and I also get attacked by the friends of the CBC. But like I think I strike the proper moderate prose, which is I believe in a public broadcaster, but I believe it has to be accountable and to taxpayers and efficiently run and responsibly run. And that's the position that our government has taken consistently and will continue to be so. Where I agree with the CBC, I'll point it out and I'll say so. For example, just a couple of weeks ago on Culture Days across the country, CBC was the only network that was there, actually supporting Canadian artists across the country, giving them a platform so that more Canadians could see the brilliance that there is in Canada's artistic communities across the country. It was only the public broadcaster that did it. However, of course, this is the other side of the coin as well, is that where the CBC makes missteps, if I'm asked about it, I'll comment. And that's my job.
And what are the missteps?
Well, I think I've just... Right. Access to information needs to be fully complied with and be seen to be fully complied with first. And second, on sometimes small items, but not insignificant ones, I think when Mary Walsh goes out and ambushes the mayor of Toronto and invades his personal space, I thought that was embarrassing for both Mary Walsh and the CBC.
Why is the CBC on that issue? I mean, that's controversial. Their job is to be controversial. You know that. It's a comment. You've been probably subjected to the same things. Why should we hold our satirists? Why should the CBC hold the satirists accountable? Isn't their job to push the boundaries? You watch The Daily Show. I know you watch all sorts of satirists. They push the boundary even further. Yeah,
but I think there are layers to that story. I mean, it's going to his home. I mean, what if he had his kids in the car? I just think there's a boundary between the public space and the private space, and I think it was crossed there. There are all kinds of opportunities for people to poke fun at politicians, and we take it. Believe me, we take it.
Do you think you, as the minister, just on that point, do you think it is your job to comment on things like that, or does that send a signal as if you're influencing programming decisions, which is a dangerous territory to get into?
No, I mean, not influencing programming decisions. I mean, and this is where I got into an argument, as you know, with folks over at Sun TV. It's a public broadcaster accountable to the public through the Broadcast Act, through Parliament, through appropriations, and through their annual reports. The others don't have to do that. So there's an accountability mechanism there. I don't tell the CBC what to air and what not to air. That's a different choice. I mean, I wish there were more Canucks games. You might want to do something about that. Vancouver, come on, more Canucks.
I like more Canucks.
Yeah, exactly. I think as a public broadcaster, as the minister responsible, and as someone who believes in a responsible, effective public broadcaster, I think there's plenty of room for debate. And I think I'm not out of my realm of responsibility to comment on things when they arise. If somebody asks me if I think Mary Walsh was out of line and getting into Rob Ford's personal space, then I'll say so. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, but it was out of line.
I got to leave it there. James Moore, Heritage Minister, on CBC's 75th birthday. Appreciate having you on.
Happy birthday. Thank you, by the way, for Beachcombers. Thank you for DeGrasse Junior High, for Joey and Wheels and all the great characters. Thank you for Rocky Night in Canada. CBC has a lot to be proud of, and I wish you a happy future.
And power in politics.
Lots of power in politics. It's a 3-hour show. 3-hour show.
That's what I want to hear.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes.